HB 87. Chairman Irwin, if you would, please step forward.
Where would you like?
You can sit. Yeah, that'd be great. Just going to make a couple of comments before we get started on this bill. This bill is extremely important to me, and I thank the chairman for bringing it forward. I know many of you senators have heard of the good work of the three schools, the Mountain Education, the Foothills, and the Coastal, what they do for students, what they provide for students that they've dropped out, or students that may be falling behind in their current school. They're able to go to those schools to take courses as well. Currently in two of these schools, their charter is set to end at the end of this school year, and I have one of the charters in my district, and just in Gwinnett County alone, they serve 438 students, and then I've got 101 students that they serve from Gwinnett County. I said that backwards, sorry. They serve 101 students from Gwinnett and 438 students from Barrow County. The Lieutenant Governor, this bill is also very important to him. He has 109 students that are in his home county as well. Just want to make those statements before we get started.
Great.
Please proceed, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you,
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman. And Senators, thank you for the opportunity to present before you today. I'm honored to bring this House bill before you here. And let me read the LC number because I provided a substitute to you, LC 491432S. That is what I'm working off of. And Mr. Chairman, thank you for that introduction there. I look at this bill as a dropout recovery bill, also workforce development, and I'm going to add military to that because I think many of us are aware that we cannot even enlist into our military without a high school diploma. And we have a lot of children that don't fit the exact mold that we envision in school today, which is in 4 years you're going to graduate, you're going to take math every year, you're going to take language arts every year. We put them in the exact same box and try to spit them out at one end. And this bill, in unison with what these three programs, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned, do is it provides flexibility for our students that don't necessarily fit the exact 4-year exact schedule and mold that we envisioned for them when they started 9th grade. And it could be due to many different causes in life. It could be they're sick and have cancer and they need some flexibility at where and how they go to school. Could be that they need to work during the day. Could be that they're pregnant. And so they need options. And what we're trying to do is continue those type of options. The three current schools that have charters we talked about is Mountain Ed, Foothills, and Coastal Plains. Very proud of what they do and how they service the state of Georgia. And I'm sure in folks that might be speaking to you later talk to you about the success that those programs have had. So with this, we've set up a governance structure for what we're calling these completion schools. The accountability for those schools, we've set up 7 zones in the state of Georgia. Now, why that is important to you is we currently have 3 of these schools that serve what I will tell you is the north rim of our state. Then you can come down the east side of our state and you can move a little bit towards the Macon. But if you get close to Columbus, Albany, Bainbridge, Valdosta, almost no availability for these type of programs for these children. The only availability would be if their school system was large enough and able to provide it within their own funds themselves, which would be a night program, is what I'd get to. So 7 zones within this bill, which again, I'll tell you, I think is very important because I'm going to encourage very strongly if we can get this bill passed and signed by the governor that we need to look at starting up programs in the southwest and central part of the state. as well as could happen here in Metro, although there are quite a few of the school systems in Metro that are involved either with Foothills or Mountain Ed at this time. And then, of course, it establishes a funding mechanism for these schools. So what we did was we studied this as a House this past year and developed this bill to allow these schools to transition into this program, which is going to help with the dropout recovery students, or what I'll call the non-traditional students in our state. The flexibility that we added to this bill is very similar to what they're currently doing. So in other words, they can sign up for a waiver just like all but 2 of our school systems in the state can. They can change the seat time then. They have the flexibility to provide credit recovery, move on when ready, so that a student can accelerate if they feel they need to within this program. And Mr. Chairman, I could definitely go much deeper, but that's a pretty good rundown of what we've got here before you.
Thank you very much. We have any comments or questions from the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Irwin, thank you for being here and presenting this bill. It's my understanding, I'm sorry I just couldn't capture it, it's a long bill. Can you walk us through the funding? Is it 75% of QBE if they remained a full state charter? Or where does the funding land as it relates to the QBE compared to the state charter?
Yes, Chairman Dolenzal, let me tell you, as I said, we established a funding formula. What we did was these 3 charters receive more money per child than they are spending currently. And I think if the directors that are sitting behind me speak to you, I think they're going to tell you about the tens of millions that they have sitting in their reserve at this time. So what we did was we cut the QBE funding back for the completion school to the QBE funding plus 100% of the alternative ed funding, which on a ratio is 1.5. So if you looked at it in dollar amounts, let's say it's about $1,300 or $1,400 more dollars to educate that child than the feeder school that is sending them there. Now that is for your the LEA, which is the completion school. And that is currently, if you look at those students, that would be about 1/3 of their children. The other part of this funding, and I'm trying hard not to get too down in the weeds, will be reported and given back to the home or providing school system. So let's use my system, Banks County. If a child is dropping out in 10th grade and decides to go to Mountain Ed, that child will still be enrolled in Banks County schools. And Banks County will report and receive that child on their allotment sheet, and then they will sign an MOU with Mountain Ed to continue that child's education, get them the credits. And if in 11th grade they want to come back from Mountain Ed to their home school, they can. If they want to graduate from Mountain Ed, they can. So the best answer I can give you, Chairman Dolenzal, is that 100% of the QBE formula funding plus the alternative weight if they're a completion school LEA student there. So we're going to see if this is adequate money. We've also are allowing in this that the reserve money that are sitting with these programs will stay with them. So there will be a period where they could adjust to the new formula funding. I think they'll also tell you here on the funding piece is that, that we were overfunded. Our bank account says that, and that we'd rather be right funded for the children and what it takes to get them through and completing in school rather than putting money in the bank.
Follow, Mr. Chairman. If I could distill this down so that my simple mind can understand it, These schools currently are treated as state charters, meaning they capture the standard QBE money plus what would be the local match.
That's correct.
From the state, though. So the state is providing the full amount of funding. You're basically saying you're changing this to treat them more like a traditional student, where we still pay the full QBE. There may be that bonus in the addition of, or in the case of the students that you mentioned. But this is essentially being done to provide a permanent funding source that these schools can remain solvent without having to worry about the charter commission saying, well, you're not really a state charter because you're using existing facilities or existing teachers or things like that. This actually, your bill, as I understand it, will ensure the longevity of these institutions. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I'd like to point out, too, and when you're doing a non-traditional setting like this, you're not providing necessarily food, transportation, sports programs. So there's some costs that schools such as this would not have that a normal K-12 school would have. So that's where I get to the right funding piece that we're trying to get to. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much, Chairman Irwin. I remember a bill from a few years ago that dealt with in this same subject area. And I remember at that time there were attempted changes to the formula. So I'm just trying to draw, connect the dots here between what you've got and I remember, that bill from several years ago. How much of funding is there now from the state versus how much will there be under your bill were it to pass and be signed into law?
The piece that is being removed, and I'm going to work off of round numbers if I can, are the, as Chairman Dolenzal said, was the charter funding that we would give a charter student, because charter schools don't have the local piece of tax money. So what I'm being told is that was a little less than $7,000 on average of a child. So when I did a dive into this, the alternative funding is what a school system can apply for if they have a non-traditional student they want to list down there, and it's a ratio, again, of 1.4 or 1.5, which in dollar amounts for the average child comes out to be about $1,300, I guess is what we're getting to. So the difference here we're talking about is about $5,000 or a little less than what they are currently receiving per child. Which if you think to build reserves in tens of millions, that you're not spending that already on children, you're putting it in the bank. So that is how I was trying to get to the right formula. And I believe that's kind of where we started a couple of years ago. We started looking that this was overfunded, and where is that good number to hit on? And I'm very comfortable that we're at a good formula funding for these children right now, and very comfortable with it if we leave the reserve money with them, because we can always do adjustments as needed down the line if we see that isn't there, and allowing them to use their reserve, which is exactly what your school systems do. If they decide there's an issue and they need to spend more money on certain kids, they can dip into their reserve during that year to do it.
Thank you.
Leader Gooch.
Thank you. Chairman Irwin, thank you for bringing the legislation. I get the funding part, and I understand that. Talk a little bit about why we need the rest of the bill. What are the issues that you're trying to address? The Mountain Education Program in my district's been working very well. It's not only kids that could be dropping out, but these are kids that are intending to go to college. Maybe they're just not in an environment at a public school that's working well for them, so they try this Mountain Ed program, and it pushes them even farther in their career than they would have gone otherwise if they'd have stayed in a public school setting. So I'm concerned that we're trying to find a solution to a problem that's not there. I'm not clear where the problem is other than the funding piece. I get the funding part.
Great. Thank you, Leader Gooch. Senators, what I'll tell you is under Senate Bill 153 that we passed, and Senator Parrott, that's exactly what you were talking about. I recall that bill. That bill under the current statute that we have in law is gonna, what the DOE State Board has looked at is shutting down Mountain Ed and shutting down Coastal Plains. That's been the recommendation to them, is to close down. Obviously, they could still function for a period of time on their reserves, but that would drain very quickly if they didn't have any other funding coming to them. So this bill is keeping them in existence. And realizing that when we studied it, and then when the DOE hired the consultants, looked at the best path forward using Senate Bill 153, and the recommendation came out, the best thing now would be to dismantle. And that was the impetus of this Bill 87, was we don't want to dismantle. They're doing a good thing. We want them to keep functioning, and this was the way to do it. So this is exactly the option for a path forward for two of them. Now, I mentioned two of the systems to you for a reason. Foothills had one more year still on their contract with their charter with the state. So they could function for one more school year, and then very likely the same thing happened after their reserves closes down on them. Did that dig enough into your answer, Leader Gooch?
Well, you sort of danced around it in some ways. I understand the funding part, and I understand last year's legislation that came over from the House that, if I'm not mistaken, it would sunset the funding June 30th of this year, but I'm still not clear what the issues are with the schools as they were operating currently. Why not just fix the funding and leave everything else alone?
Their state charters.
I understand their state charters, but there's other things in the bill that go beyond, I mean, having to get permission from the school systems, the local schools, and for the kids to be able to enter into these other schools. Why do we need that extra burden on the student and the parent? And maybe I'm misunderstanding what's in the bill, but just things that I've seen in the short time that I've had to read it. So, I mean, can you clarify? And maybe we get some of the school system people to come up shortly to explain it. Or maybe I'm missing something, but I'm not challenging you. I'm just trying to understand further why we're making the changes that we are outside the funding portion of it.
And again, you probably got the best suggestion is allow the school systems to come up, the directors that are here that have signed up that want to speak to that, and let them tell you they have been dealing with the DOE and the consultant that has been speaking to them about what are their options. When I began this, I told them to look at Senate Bill 153, and if you could use that as Plan A, as Leader Gooch, I kept saying that's got to be Plan A. Try to use that as your plan, and then if we can get this done, we will. And so we're at this stage to offer them this opportunity. They still have Senate Bill 153 that they could try to function under, but they're being told. And the assessment is that it would either be very difficult to educate the children like they are right now, or it would be impossible to do.
Just one last comment, and I'll stop. Well, thank you for trying to answer that. I just want everyone to understand how important this system is to our communities. You represent part of that area as well, and so without mountain education, I'm not sure where those children would be today. A lot of them would quit school. A lot of them work during the day. They come to school at night. Once they get their high school diploma, they go on to technical college or even a university there locally, and they've done very well. I know some of them personally have been very successful in business, so I just don't want to mess up a good thing. So I'll continue to watch and monitor that. But thank you so much.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I had a couple of concerns or questions, I guess, with the bill. Concerned about, didn't see where grandfathering of the students in the bill. And I did engage, I talked to Michael with Ledge Council. Could I call on you, Michael, to see what your opinion was on that?
I do believe if the specific question, Mr. Chairman, is regarding the grandfathering, that is addressed in the substitute.
Okay.
241, line 241.
Okay.
244. So students who are in any of the 3 existing programs as of June 30th of this coming year would be eligible to be enrolled in the completion schools once they commence their existence effective July 1. So as to the grandfathering question, the substitute does address that.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could add to that, my intent always is, you've got to remember, you've got what I'll call, in some cases, a fragile child. And we're close to getting them across that line. We sure don't want to break that rope of pulling them across that line. What we want to do is allow these children to continue in the process that they've been going through to try to get done. So and my intent here totally was to grandfather any child that is existing in there in the school. So starting with the new school year, those would then be the new students under this program. But any student that is existing in that program, which in the state, I believe, comes out to be close to 6,000 kids, we'd want to continue that. And just make
Absolutely.
sure that that rope doesn't get broken and we get them across the line.
Yeah, well, thank you for having that in there. And then the other question or concern I had was students that are like in contiguous counties to the school. Did y'all address that in the bill?
We have that. We have contiguous in there, and we have the DOE is assigned to work. Currently, we have 2 systems, and one in Pioneer RESA and one in Northeast Georgia RESA that are in separate zones. So one would be Franklin County, the other one would be Elbert County. And I even spoke to those superintendents today. They are preparing in their mind, if this bill goes through, they're going to switch over time with the DOE. One will go to Mountain Ed, the other one will go to Foothills. So they will switch zones in which they are assigned, and those superintendents seemed absolutely fine with it. They understood it. We don't have, in my eyes, one program better than the other. Foothills, Coastal Plain, and Mountain Ed all do a fantastic job with our children. And so, I don't think the superintendents feel that they want to be in one versus another. They're just glad they have the flexibility.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then one last question I had, looking on the sub, line 190, for the eligible enrollment of 18. Just curious about that, why y'all landed on 18 versus 16.
16 is dropout age, but it's a quitting age. You got to read what a dropout is in the state of Georgia and federal government. Federal government went through this many years ago where we were all trying to report what is a dropout and what is not a dropout in the state. So it is, a student that has with his or her cohort 4 years has not completed his cycle in school. Then they're listed as a dropout. You could imagine if you didn't do something like that, what you do is you would have a kid that would leave, which we have many that do in 11th grade, but then they come back their 12th grade year because they don't want to be at home anymore. Well, we've already listed them as a dropout if we did it that way. And so then that child could easily become a double dropout for a system. And then if a system didn't do that, it wouldn't be normal reporting. So what we did was we tried to follow the state definition of what a dropout is in the 4-year cohort. And you're not going to have many students in the state of Georgia that are underneath 18 years of age when that occurs. And that's how we were landing on that 4-year cohort number.
And so a student under the age of 18, they would have to go back to their, whatever school that they're currently at or were at before?
Good question. And this is where the MOU comes in. This student, let's just say, says, I'm 17 years old, I want to drop out, and at 17 and a half, I want to go back, but I want to go to Mountain Ed. They absolutely have the right to do it. What we're going to do with this bill is allow the local school they were at that they left stay involved with the child. By the way, they're the ones that know them the best. They've been teaching them since kindergarten, and stay involved with them And for the reporting purposes and the funding purposes, stay involved with them at Mountain Ed. Don't just pass the ball off and let the Mountain Ed try to learn the child and what's best for the child. Go be involved with the child. So that is a 70. Now, if it's an 18-year-old kid that has dropped out for the last year and a half, they're going to enroll full-time at Mountain Ed, and they're going to be just Mountain Ed, and it would not be involved with their local school that they came from. But this could also occur and get the local school more involved in the child that says, I want to drop out today, but I want to start Mountain Ed tomorrow. Well, we're going to walk you over there. We're going to sign you up. We know how to do it. We know the people. We know the teachers. We're not just going to give you the phone number and send you over there in your car. We're going to take you over there. That's the premise of that idea, was to keep the local school system more involved with the children, even if they've said, I want to quit. Well, you got Mountain Ed, let's try to help you with Mountain Ed. Let me help you with Foothills. Let me help you with Coastal Plains.
And my only concern with it, and I don't disagree with the direction you're going with it, would be, a 16-year-old drops out for whatever reason, and doesn't intend on going back to school, and say they're 16 and a half or 17, and they realize they're at a job during the day, and they realize, heck, if I go back and get my high school diploma, I can get a raise or I can get a better job, and they want to go back, but they don't want to go back to that other school. That's my only concern with that. That's why I brought that up about the age.
Gotcha, understood.
Any further questions for the committee? Senator Sims?
Thank you. If I can get this mic. Thank you. I'm from Southwest Georgia. No foothills, no mountains, no coast. For the last few years, we've been asking for something similar in Southwest Georgia, and we're not in the budget. We're not mentioned, and we get promises. Obviously, your program is worth having. It appears to be working for what it purports to do for students. But it's very difficult for me to sit and vote for this when there's nothing happening for our students in Southwest Georgia. They deserve the same attention. They deserve the same thing. So when, and I don't know if we have any, I don't know how you get the conversation started or how you get it done, but we would like to have it done. So.
Senator Sims, in the bill, I have a $5 million startup. There has been conversations in your area near Albany with school systems that would love to see this get started. So that is a definite choice area. We've also written in the bill that we can do one per year until all 7 zones have the availability of this in it. So we're putting that in this bill, that we're wanting the funds to be in place to start those up, and the DOE will head that up. Inside this bill, we have somebody working with the DOE, and they're going to assist with the startup. I've even talked to the director of the newest program that has started up, sitting behind me, Ricky Rentz, as he is knowledgeable of some of your systems that wanted to join him before Senate Bill 153 came out, and we changed that charter structure. So there's definite conversations going on in Southwest Georgia with this, and my envision would be working with the DOE and seeing this occurring within the next 2 years.
The DOE understands perfectly well how I feel about this, and I've not heard any conversation from them. And it really scares me that we've been talking about it and nothing is happening that I can see. And you guys have been in existence for how long? 20 years? More?
The first one was Mountain Ed, started in 1993, I believe.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments from the committee? All right, we'll hear from our first speaker, Carrie Pritchard. Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Carrie Pritchard. I'm the Assistant Director of Policy for the Department of Education. First, I'm going to say to Chairman Irwin, thank you so much for your collaboration, your hard work, and all the conversations in producing this piece of legislation. We are very supportive. The only ask that the department has, and this is it's kind of perfect for Senator Sims on her ask, in the bill right now is the funding for the department to support the work is 0.5% of the LEA earnings. As Chairman Irwin said, it's about a third of the students, which is about $6,000 per school, which would be about $18,000 a year to support the expansion, the growth, the establishment, all of the important work that needs to happen. I don't know that $18,000 is enough to support that work. We do offer a couple of suggestions. We suggest possibly amending the language to either, and it can stay 0.5%, but 0.5% of the full FTE earnings of all of the students, or 1% of all the students, half or one. Fund a full-time position, have a line item in the budget. We estimate the cost would be about $160,000 a year for salary and benefits for one full-time person, or allow the department to hold on to the $2 million that we currently have from the Goal Academy or from the Senate Bill 153 schools to carry on the work over the next 5 years in order to expand and grow the programs. So those would be that's our ask. And again, thank you all. I believe this started with Senate Bill 153 and has moved forward to the point that we are now. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, thank you. Side discussion. Any comments or questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you.
Senator, if I could have, just a point, in appropriations, we appropriated $60,000 in appropriations that we just passed over to you in HB 19 for that position we were just speaking of. DOE did a good job of coming to me and telling me that the 0.5% wasn't enough, and so we took it up to a part-time position to start these schools up for us and to work with the other programs transitioning. And so if it passes, and I have spoken to Chairman Hickman here that he's aware that we have that money in the
Okay.
budget.
Good deal. Yeah, probably so. And then we've got Sherry with Foothills is our next speaker. And then Wayne from Mountain Education, you're on deck. Please proceed. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having us here today and having the opportunity to hear what's going on with House Bill 87. First of all, I want to give thanks, and then I want to tell you some points that we'd like for you to consider. And I'm telling you, some of these points may have been considered unto our we just didn't know about the substitute bill, so we're really anxious to read that and see if they have been addressed. But let's start with thanks. Chairman Irwin, thank you for bringing this bill here, because we all know that Senate Bill 153, the way it was written, it would never be, we could not implement it. And I really appreciate the fact that we're standing here and having this conversation. Because when you came to visit us at Foothills, and I said we needed legislation, you said it would be a steep climb. I said, let's start climbing. And so we've been climbing all year. So thank you for this, because it would not have worked. Thank you for the attendance zones. That's important. And as we heard earlier, every student in the state of Georgia, they deserve this opportunity. And this is what high school is going to look like as we move forward. And I'm just really proud that the state of Georgia is addressing this and setting up these zones with hopes that every student, if they need this option, they've got it. So we thank you for that. And we also appreciate that you acknowledge that these students do cost a little bit more to educate by adding the alternative weight. And that is important as we go forward in looking at these kids. So we appreciate that effort. We also appreciate being able to remain as an LEA, that's a local educational agency. We need to be able to control our work so we can focus on our kids, because that's why I'm here today. You know, right now I have 2,500 kids enrolled in our school at Foothills, and we're located in 21 different sites, and I'm here for them. When they came to us to come to Foothills, we made a promise with them that they could earn a high school diploma, and that's why I'm here, is to make sure, and not just a diploma, this is a quality diploma where they can get a job once they leave us. We need to make that happen for every student in the state of Georgia. So that's important. We appreciate being able to use our fund balance. As several people have mentioned, we'll end up this year with like $28 million. When we first opened in 2015, year 2, we knew we had too much money and we started raising our hand. We've got too much money over here. Who does that? We did, because we knew that was not the proper level. Well, here we are, and we appreciate being able to address that, and let's make it right, because that's important. And Chris, let me just, I know him from Chris, we are going to do the best job ever implementing House Bill 87. We are hard workers, and we're focused on students and making sure they have what they need to be successful. And our job is to identify barriers. And if there's a barrier, we're going to crawl all over it till we figure it out so these students can achieve. And usually those barriers are adult-made, they're not student-made, and we need to be able to keep doing that work. So we really give thanks for that. But there are some concerns, and again, I'm really anxious to see this new version because we haven't seen it, is the grandfathering. Because right now I've got 2,500 kids who thinking they're graduating, and I need to be able to go back and say, yes, indeed, keep focused, get your work done, because we're all about staying focused on the job. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. We'd like consideration of 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, and you addressed that earlier. But those kids are not coming back. We got to hold on tight. If they're here, if we let them walk, they're gone. And so we need to make sure that we're holding on to the 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds and having them being our enrolled students.
Could I ask you a question about the 16 and 17-year-olds?
Nothing would please me more.
Thank you for coming and speak today. I appreciate that.
Yes.
I guess my question is, do you have a lot of 16, 17-year-olds that have dropped out, that don't want to go back to their previous school?
We do, and as a matter of fact, I went back just to see for this moment in time, we have 2,500 kids that are enrolled, and of those kids, 1,100 of those kids are what are called enrolled kids, kids that are 18 and older. And so right now, we have about 1,400 kids that are underage. So that's going to cut right into us, and this is going to take some conversation with superintendents. It's not real quick, you know, it takes time to develop this and for people to trust this process, and we're worried about losing those kids in the meantime if they don't get permission from their school district to come to us. Because one thing that's very unique, and you mentioned this earlier, we are a charter school today, but this bill takes that away, and I think there was some conversation back here. We'll no longer be a charter school. We'll be a state school, and we will have to apply for each one of the different waivers, et cetera, in order to operate. Well, we're a choice school for those kids, and that's one of the major reasons it works. The kids choose to come to us. They are not assigned to us, and that includes the 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds. And I'm telling you, you back them in a corner and you make them do something they don't want to do. If you've ever parented a teenager, you know what I just said. You know, they have to have choice, and we're afraid we're going to lose that option for kids who are under 18. But we're very happy to see the revision. Maybe there's something in there that we don't understand, but I just want to put it on the table. Choice matters.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Senator Dolezal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. I want to clarify, to make sure I understand. You currently have 16 and 17-year-olds enrolled in your school
We do.
currently. So, given your state charter status, and again, some senators were texting me asking questions, so maybe I'll just lay this out. As I understand it, you tell me if I'm correct. Two types of charters, state and local. State charters means the state picks up all of the expense. Local gets QBE plus local money, right? You all are in the state charter bucket, meaning you're paying what, for those students previously would have been the QBE plus the local funding is getting paid for by the state. Your bill, Chairman Irwin, reduces that funding, recognizing that they were overfunded, and thank you for being honest about that. But it increases a little bit above the QBE amount. I'm curious on the policy decision then, given that for every student that's there today, that if they convert to this new funding model, we're able to keep them in the school but actually spend less money in every instance. Is that accurate? And then my second question would be, help us understand the policy decision, if that's the case, around, and is it the policy decision to carve out the 16 and 17-year-olds, or are we misunderstanding that?
Let's ask your first question in a different way about, can we fund them?
Ultimately, we're on every single student, and call it the old program versus what your bill will do. We're able to keep them in the program, but the state actually spends less money because we recognize that they didn't need the full allotment that the state charter status gives them. So recognizing that we would be saving money on every one of these students, but still hopefully getting them to the point of becoming high school graduates, which is the goal and the good work that they do. Does the policy change here somehow preclude 16 and 17-year-olds? And if it does, could you walk us through that?
Let's start, first of all, in school superintendents are about spending their money they get on their children. And they get it in three major buckets that you can think of, which is state, federal, and local. And they spend it on the kids, so they're not a bank account. So getting to the less funding piece, yes, I think that at least for a period in time, we're going to be able to assess that, you know, instead of putting it in the bank, we're going to spend everything we get on the kids. So I'm very comfortable with that piece. We do in the state of Georgia, when we do allotments, that the school systems are only allowed to do 1% of their kids at the alternative weight, which is that 1.4, 1.5. I believe that percent they can request is 5% or less of the children that they report as that alternative funding, because remember, that carries more weight. This LEA we've set up here for those children, it's at 100% of their children will receive that. So yes, I am very comfortable, Chairman Dolenzal, with the funding piece for us to look at it, see if we can continue these programs. I do not expect the reserves to stay at $28 million. I would say over time that would bleed down until the staff and the spending got lined up with the needs of the children, rather than putting it in the bank.
I agree with the funding 100%. I think I'm trying to point out the fact that we're actually saving the state money while ensuring the longevity of the program. But the question that I have relates to the 16 or 17-year-olds, and I talk too fast, so I apologize.
Okay.
What happens with 16 and 17-year-olds under your bill?
They're currently funded just like they are when they're in school at their current school.
Okay.
So the exact same funding they are not funded on the higher level, which would be the charter funding, so that would be the savings.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you.
Actually, if I could add a piece to that, the funding goes to the home district for the 16 and 17-year-olds, and it has to flow through to us. So everybody's not lining up to let the money flow in and out, you know, so that's going to be a conversation. It's a dance we have to learn because it doesn't happen right now, but it goes to the district. The ones that are the enrolled students right now, the 18-year-olds, that funding will come directly to us and we'll spend as we've done in the past. So that piece hasn't changed.
Do you all, if I got a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, do you all anticipate having any local funding then to help with those students who who are the 16 or 17-year-olds that would be entering your system or entering your school out of their previous system?
Do you want the real truth?
Yeah, preferably.
No,
Okay.
not a penny. I think what we'll get is what the school district earns from the state. And as, Representative Irwin just told us, there would be the QBE plus the alternative weight. And that will be up in the MOU. We've been working on the MOU, who does what and how it all works. And it's a puzzle. It's very different than what we're accustomed to. But that would come and flow straight to us. But the trick is that the way QBE works, you get 3 times that you identify those students, and it takes 3 counts before the funding actually gets to the district. So it's like 18 months before the funding is actually generated. So that's a dance that we have on here. How does that work? And I think those are some of the pieces, I think, Representative Irwin, that you want the DOE to kind of work out, because that is not tidy how we do it right now. And that's, because our budget is like a 48% cut from what we're accustomed to. And right now, we're trying to figure out how we're going to open our doors with that cut, knowing we have the fund balance and we'll use it. And, we're working on it, and we're.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop you right there. I've got a couple more speakers, and we've got some more bills we've got to get
If I could
through.
just add one more. Youth Challenge program is not in there, and maybe it was added. I didn't see the new point. But the Youth Challenge program, those are our people. We work with kids at Fort Stewart and Fort Gordon, and they're not listed.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
what I'm going to do today, was hoping to vote on this today, but it's going to be a hearing only. But one thing I'll commit to you is we'll look. We've got a committee meeting scheduled for next Tuesday morning at 8. I'm going to try to get something for maybe Thursday of this week so we can get this moving on. But with the sub coming in so quickly and this being such an important bill, I want to make sure we get it right.
Absolutely.
Chairman Dixon, can you answer a question?
Yes, sir.
Who provided the sub for today?
I did.
Okay, so you brought the sub?
Yes, sir.
It wasn't a committee sub?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And I haven't been doing a good job with keeping time today. This is a very important bill, and I've been a little sidetracked with Ledge Council, but if you could keep it at about 3 minutes.
Sir,
Thank you.
I will be brief. Chairman Dixon, Senators, Representative Irwin, bottom line up front, we're grateful. We have been trying to operationalize Senate Bill 153, and we've run out of time. And looking through the lens of where we are, we see a lot of opportunity here in this House bill. And I will be very honest, we believe we can make it work. Prior to becoming a State Charter School Commission school, we were on this level of funding, and we were able to operate, we were able to serve students. And we're looking at a lot of these as opportunities. I know that there's going to be some growing edges, but we don't believe that there's anything in this version that we can't make work. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to hear from Coastal Plain.
Good afternoon. I'll be briefer than that. I'm just going to read 4 points. Hope you look at considering changing the dropout age from 18 to 16. This would impact all 3 schools tremendously. Also, and I think this has already been done, to grandfather our present students in, which it sounds like that Representative Irwin has changed that. Also in the bill, it has that the DOE will hire the superintendent. I wish you would look at that and consider the local board being able to hire the superintendent from the school. And then allow DOE, when Senate Bill 153 first came out, we were all in favor of it because it cut the funding. However, when it went to the House, it changed tremendously. So what I would ask is let DOE study the funding and get a sustainable funding source there. And then on top of that, we're supposed to transition at the end of this year. If you could allow 1 year for us to transition, it's going to take a lot of work to transition from the system we're in right now to get MOUs and set all this up, all the moving parts with our partners. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, I'd like to know why, is it just money that you're talking about to change it from 18 to 16? Or are you saying
No,
that
I'll-
the ones
I'll
from
be very
16
honest.
through 18 don't deserve to, what are you saying?
To be honest with you, if I drop out of school, I'm not going to go back to the same school I dropped out of and register for Coastal Plains. It's not about the money. It's about helping kids.
That's what I thought.
And
but you said it was
that's what
save
we
money.
do.
Okay, because I thought you
Just
said
help
it was
kids.
save money. You didn't say that?
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a quick one. I don't think any of us up here understand the dropout thing, so could you unpack that a little bit more for us? Is it accurate that the functional change from changing the age from 18 to 16 would indeed allow for this alternate funding that Representative Irwin has mentioned? Is that accurate?
Would it change our funding?
Would it allow for the additional funding if the age were to change from 18 to 16?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So there is a financial piece. Walk us through a little bit more, besides the financial piece, what it is how it's helpful to change the age.
To change the age?
Yes, sir.
When, in changing the dropout age, I have a little over 2,000 students, okay? If we were to change that right now, I have 1,850 that would go back to schools. I would only have less than 200 students that would actually be mine because of the age. In a regular school system, the other thing that hasn't been brought up yet is the federal funding too. Depending on how schools are funded, we might lose a great deal of our federal funds that we receive now as well. It all depends on how that school system is set up. So depending on how we partner with those schools, and I would partner really with more than 15 school systems, because we're looking at a student who comes from, right now we have 71 different school districts in Coastal Plains where students have come from. Now, part of what the interpretation of the bill is, if I move to Glenn County, am I a Glenn County student or am I still Atlanta City when I move from there? I might live in Glenn County. Is it the county that you live in? Is that your home school? You might not have ever attended that system. So when you look at the funding, we're not sure the funds are going to follow the student. That's why it's important to us, for one, to have access to student records when they're 16 years old. If a student comes to Coastal Plains or Mountain Ed and Foothills, that base school that they came from, they're not going to follow that child. We will, because they're ours. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And like I said, we will definitely hear this at my next meeting, either Thursday or Tuesday, but just want to have some time to digest the sub and be in touch with you as well.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senators, for your consideration. And I'll tell you, if you're looking at the next bill being 340, Chairman Corbett's asked me to sit in his place, Chairman, so
if you would
his
indulge
bill.
us, Mr. Chairman, we would
If
be
y'all are
grateful.
not totally tired of me now, I'm going to stay for one more with you.
Please do. Please proceed whenever
You
you're
want me
ready.
to proceed
Yes, sir.
then, too? House Bill 340, I'm working off of LC 491385S there. This bill is about securing the planning periods for K-12 teachers that you'll see. A very simple bill, also requiring teachers to pay attention to safety and their safety plans within their school during their planning period on a daily basis. As we know, as the year rocks along, different safety situations, our safety in a school changes. So this bill encompasses that, the importance of putting that in there, but also securing those planning periods. So the teacher has the opportunity to sit down for a period and go over the lessons for the next day or the remaining lessons of that day and prepare. and it is locking it in. So that is simply what this bill does.
And it doesn't require them to work any additional hours or anything like that?
Does no additional hours, and we've all heard about elementary school and how we secure the lunches for the teachers, elementary school, doing the same thing for planning periods here for teachers.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
Excuse me, but don't they already have this in place?
No, ma'am.
Don't they have a planning session?
They
Sometimes
do.
It's not every day, but
Yes, and they should have it every day too. I know my teachers all did, and we tried to protect that. However, there of course could be a situation where teachers are absent, difficult to get somebody. So the easiest grab is to walk down the hall, grab the teacher that is already teaching a class. She's on planning period. Hey, come down here and take that teacher that's absent. Instead of working very hard to get a substitute, situations like that, we're trying to protect the teacher's time and give them some teeth to that planning period. And it's also recognizing the importance of giving the teacher an opportunity to plan for her day for the instruction of her kids.
if you could further,
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Chairman. So this will be in addition to the planning period that they'll have? Or they won't have any more?
No,
It'll just
this
be
is, this is
every-
just securing the one that they currently should have from their school system. You know, I could give you many scenarios that, we not just a sick person, we got a fire drill and this type stuff, and I'm gonna take your planning period every time away from you there. We need to be able to secure that, but it is not adding a planning period or adding a period. It is giving the teachers in K-12 an opportunity to plan for one period. Now, remember, if you're on block scheduling, that could be 2 periods, because blocks are 2 periods and half the year long. And so there are different types of schedule, but this bill simply secures that planning period and provides for the safety piece inside that hour. At the beginning of it, they're thinking, hey, what is going on today at school? And what am I supposed to do if we have an intruder? So in other words, we're stepping up the level of working with safety during our planning.
Thank you. My mother and father both taught over 50 years each with APS, and then I was a teacher for 11 years. So I'm not against it, I just want to understand
Right.
what you do. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Does this bill, basically what you're saying is it prohibits schools from having a teacher cover another class during their planning period, or from administration planning meetings and things like that during planning period?
At best control. It does not take away that if you had a fire drill where somebody pulled a fire alarm and she's on planning period, she needs to go out. She needs to follow that, but so, under the normal circumstance and function of the day, this bill protects and that planning period for our teachers so that they can prepare.
Okay, thank you.
Senator, yes, ma'am.
We've got a couple of speakers. We've got somebody from Page that would like to speak.
Good afternoon. I'm Margaret Ciccarelli from Page, the state's largest teacher organization representing about 95,000 educators statewide. And we are here today to testify in support of Chairman Corbett's legislation and to ask for your consideration of that and to cite our surveys that show that planning time is one of the most requested tools that educators would like in our statewide surveys so that they can better assist students. This is not an issue about what adults want. It's about how do we prepare to serve students, especially as we roll out our new literacy pieces and other things that we're asking teachers to do that's so important for them to be prepared to show teachers, to serve students. I will add that to the senator's question about whether or not what schools are required to do, that you should know that this is waivable. A school under its strategic waiver contract or its flexibility contract with the state will be able to waive this requirement, and as many school districts already do, waive some employee protections and student class sizes and things like that. We know that if we made it not waivable, we couldn't get this bill through. And so it's important to give school systems the flexibility to make sure that they have staff coverage and that we are safely supervising students, but also strongly encourage planning time, which is critical for the education workforce to serve students.
Thank you.
So, what you're saying, they can do this now, right? They can offer a planning period now. And then you're saying we're going to allow them to waive it. So what's the point of the bill?
The point of the bill, we hope, is that it sends a message to districts that they need to do everything they can to work hard, to hire subs, to stop pulling teachers off when they absolutely don't have to. But they have the flexibility to do so.
Couldn't you have done an urging resolution?
But that's true of almost every education bill we pass. I mean, we always need to look at every piece and say, is this waivable?
Yeah, but we end up in a debate over may and shall, and as soon as it turns to may, the bill becomes pointless. So, I mean, I voted against one earlier today because they were wanting to do a may. You're welcome. And I just, I was ready to make a motion to pass for sake of time, but now I've got some concerns. So
Oh, no, I complicated the issue.
a lesson to everyone, you can talk people out of your legislation.
I just didn't want y'all to be
Especially pointless
surprised when you heard
legislation.
from your teachers,
Okay.
like, about what passed out of here.
Thank you.
It's a well-intentioned bill that will do good, and we appreciate y'all bringing it.
Thank you.
Did it start out as a show?
There was debate in House Ed about whether or not to allow it to be non-waivable, but there's general acceptance in the education community that it would really complicate this to make it non-waivable.
That's the point I'd like to make, that, school superintendents are not going to try to take away the opportunity to plan for teachers intentionally like that. Now, there are some situations where you've got some administrators that will take advantage of that, rather take the easy road is what I'd say, instead of the harder road. And we went through COVID, you could imagine also. So in other words, getting subs were very difficult. So teachers ended up working 6 straight periods without an opportunity to prepare for it. So.
Senator Sims?
But so, and I agree with you, probably now it's time for us to look at the waiver, because some leaders have done a phenomenal job with it, and some really take advantage of it. I can waive this, I can waive that, and it really disrupts the educational setting. So it may be time for us to take a look at the waivers. Now, that's just my personal opinion.
Thank you. So we've got any other questions? We've got our next speaker,
They waive everything.
Buddy Costley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. My name is Robert Costley, Buddy Costley, and I represent the Georgia Association of Educational Leaders. And one of the fellow former superintendents in the room and former principals, I was a middle school principal who had to pull a teacher every now and then to cover planning in the past. I do want to thank the author, Chairman Corbett, was extremely collaborative on this bill. Just a couple of points of clarification that have come up. Basically, when you pull an adult, you're pulling them to cover a class where there's not an adult. So it's always a safety issue. Basically, there are times when you have 30 kids in a classroom and you don't have enough adults. We agree, we don't want to take the easy way out because we need to do everything we can to find subs, et cetera, but as anybody knows who's run a school, some days the wheels fall off and you cannot find subs. And I think the author was trying to walk the tightrope where we don't want to force a principal to have to break a law just to get kids, an adult in the room. There are flexibilities in the bill itself that allow a principal to make that decision. They need that discretion. But I do want to say, I agree with Chairman Irwin. We asked the author to put a definition of planning in the bill, and the definition of planning is boatload of duties that our teachers have that they never get a whole lot of credit for. It would not be in the best interest of any principal or superintendent to take away time to do all of those duties, instructional design, data analysis, et cetera, away from our teachers. The only reason we would pull them is for safety issues. We do want to thank the author for giving us the flexibility to do that. But today, this morning, our teachers definitely have a planning, and they are not, they're paid to plan. There are duties that are in that planning period. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got our last speaker, Deanne Harris, Educators First.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Deanna Harris with Educators First, and we want to thank Chairman Irwin and Chairman Corbett for working with us on this initial idea to protect teachers' planning time, especially considering all the new bills that are passing for literacy advancement. They will definitely need to have this time available for these new ideas that we have coming out of this legislature. So we just wanted to do that, and thank you guys for everything that you do.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions from the committee? Entertain a motion at this time.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Do pass. All in favor, raise your right hand. Any opposed? It almost passed unanimously, but it didn't.
That's dangerous for rules, too,
That
right?
is, yes. That is a bad omen, but it is a good bill. I'm in favor of it, so
Thank you.
thank you for bringing it
sir.
forward.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Irwin, do you have a sponsor, a Senate sponsor that's going to be carrying it in the Senate?
No, three, four.
I'll carry it.
Jason,
I'll carry it. Oh, you going to have Anna Vitarte?
Now, he sponsors bills and votes against them, just so you know.
Yeah, be careful with that.
Isn't that right? Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So all the folks that showed up for HB 538, I apologize. The first bill, actually, it really ran over. We've got regulated industries coming in here at 4:30. So I'm going to work to see if I can get a committee hearing date for this Thursday. If I can't, I've got one standing for 8 a.m. on next Tuesday. So we will hear 87 first, and then we'll hear 538 right after that. Thank you so much. We're adjourned.